Happy New Year. This is Introduction to Fraud and Corruption, and this is lesson one of the Forensic Investigation Master Class. As I promised in December, we are going to run a series of lessons on the Forensic Investigation Master Class to assist students on the Forensic Investigation Master Class to complete their master class lessons in good time, at least within 3 months. Because starting this year, anyone who enrolls and does not complete all the 7 modules within 3 months will be penalized heavily or be discontinued from taking the course. So all students must strictly complete the masterclass training within 3 months. It is doable, and according to our experience, students are able to complete the 7 modules within an average of 1 month. So there is no reason why any student cannot complete the 7 modules uh, within 3 months. Today I'm doing introduction to fraud and corruption. I will start by saying that prevention is better than detection, and investigation since detection helps less, whereas investigation is very risky and expensive. This is a true fact when you are talking about fraud and corruption. It's much easier do to do prevention than to detect what has happened and to investigate. When you come to investigation, investigation is very risky, very, very risky because many investigators have been eliminated or neutralized during the process of investigation. Fraudsters or those who perpetrate corruption are very smart people, and they do their business of fraud or corruption in a smart way. But when it comes to deterring investigation, when it comes to discouraging investigation of their transactions or of their actions, they are very legal. They do care, they do matter the investigators. That is why investigation is very risky. And we as professionals, we should not leave things to go to this stage of investigation. The war on fraud and corruption is tough, but can be won by proactive, deliberate, and ingeniously designed strategies. It requires organization wide teamwork. It means that all staff, irrespective of their position, should be recruited into the fight against these vices. Let me define fraud, corruption, and other terminologies before we delve more into this lesson. Oral discussions on forensic investigation. What is fraud? Fraud is deliberate or intentional act of deception aimed at another person in order to deprive him or her property or privilege. Put simply, fraud is a misrepresentation of facts with the intention to mislead another person. In all acts of fraud, the fraudster gains materially or otherwise. It is not always about money. The free online dictionary defines fraud as false misrepresentation of a matter of fact, whether by words or by conduct, by false or misleading allegations, or by concealment of what should have been disclosed, that it deceives and is intended to deceive another person, so the individual will act upon it to her or his legal injury. Put simply, fraud is the deliberate act of deception by whatever means aimed at personal gain, material or otherwise, at the expense of the victim. Fraud means different things to different people under different circumstances. Some are legal definitions, others are academic, while still others are based on personal experience. The legal definition varies from country to country, and it is only since the introduction of the Fraud Act in 2026 that there has been legal definition of fraud in England and Wales. Fraud essentially involves using deception to dishonestly make personal gain for oneself or create a loss for another. End of quotation from Professor Kelly King's Cameroon 2015. What is detection? Fraud or corruption detection refers to the discovery of the ongoing wrongdoing. To detect also means to uncover or reveal the fraudulent and corruption laden transactions or dealings. What is strategy? In the context of this training on fraud and corruption investigation or fighting, strategy is an approach deliberately designed to deal with the fraud or corruption problem. Strategy refers to all systems or policies, procedures put in place to fight fraud and corruption in an organization. Fraud detection strategies are as many as human ingenuity and creativity can decide. In the next few lessons, I will be discussing 20 strategies of fighting fraud and corruption. What I will be discussing are the strategies that are basic and very important in dealing with the fraud and corruption cancer, not only in business organizations but also in a not for profits and also government organizations and agencies. Those who are fighting fraud and corruption are supposed to be thinking like fraudsters. If you do not think like fraudsters or like a fraudster, then you will always be lagging behind. the strategies of fraudsters. I will quote from Socrates. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. This is philosopher they said this because thinking is the hardest thing to do. Thinking is the hardest work to do. When I'm teaching on fraud, corruption, prevention, or detection strategies, I usually ask my participants a silly question. And the silly question is as follows: how many times do you think a day? The answer, the answers I do get have been or have been getting are not only many but also very silly. I have been getting answers like number one, I think a million times a day. Number two, I think several thousands a day. Number three, I think endless in any one day. Number four, the thinking cannot be numbered. Number five, I think several times when I am not asleep. Number six, I think countlessly. Number seven, I think as often as I am confronted with a problem. Number seven is like better. Answer number seven. I think as often as I am confronted with a problem. I have been getting these answers because, according to Socrates, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few people engage in it. I have never come across an intelligent person who answers my silly questions with well, my silly question, sorry, with a question like thinking about what? Thinking about what? This is the intelligence I do require from the participants. Because the question, how many times do you think a day, is very sick, is very silly and fair. So an intelligent person, a person who is thinking, can ask you to elaborate what thinking you are talking about before he responds or before she responds. Thinking about what is the best response. An inquisitive mind does not rush into responding to questions or providing solutions to problems without creative thinking. Underline creative thinking. In this series of lessons, to cover the forensic investigation masterclass, I am going to teach the students. I'm not going to teach students anything but how to think creatively and implement policies and systems that will work together to minimize instances of fraud or related devices like corruption. How does a fraudster think? Fraudsters think 7 times a day, whereas the average manager or staff of an organization or government thinks rarely or none at all. A fraudster thinks of number one, a fraudulent scheme or schemes or a strategy when he wakes up in the morning, that is probably immediately after breakfast. At midday, he or she thinks of another strategy. At mid afternoon, he or she thinks about another strategy or scheme. At evening, he or she thinks and designs yet another strategy. At around 11 p.m., just before he or she goes to sleep, he or she thinks about another strategy. Number six, at around 3, he wakes up and thinks about the two strategies or even prays for their success. Number 7, at dawn, he or she thinks about another strategy that day, for that day, before he wakes up for breakfast. The above only emphasizes the fact that fraudsters and other wrongdoers are constantly creating fraudulent schemes as those in charge of organizations and governments are like sleeping deeply. As the fraudsters think creatively and critically about inverting their targets, the managers and other staff, including the common man, are totally asleep. They are only too busy carrying out routine duties. Can such people match fraudsters or win against them? Never. This is why fraudsters are always ahead. They strike many times before the people who think, note, wake up to find that it is too late. I have outlined in this series of lessons step by step on how managers and their staff must think every day, every month, every quarter, every year on how to deter, prevent, and detect fraud and corruption early. The medics always tell us that prevention is better than cure. I also want to tell the leaders and the students and the listener, my listener, that the prevention and early detection of fraud is better than investigation, since investigation is very risky and too expensive. Not only risky and expensive, it is complex. Investigation of fraud and corruption is too complex, especially if the perpetration has taken a long period of time. Leaders of organizations must look for proactive systems and policies that would allow for the creativity of staff to grow instead of letting them sleep while the fraudsters are working hard in targeting their organizations. Some of the policies or systems proposed in this series of lessons will ensure that there are regular meetings of staff to brainstorm. I repeat, to brainstorm over the controls and security systems of their organization. According to Transparency International, corruption is defined as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Corruption can be classified as grand, pet, and political, depending on the amount of money lost and the sector where it occurs. Grand corruption consists of acts committed at the high level of government that distort policies of the central functioning of the state, enabling leaders to benefit at the expense of the public good. Petty corruption refers to everyday abuse of entrusted power by law and middle level public officials in their interactions with ordinary citizens who often are trying to access basic goods or services in places like hospitals, schools, police departments, and other agencies. Political corruption is a manipulation of policies, institutions, and the rules of procedure in the allocation of resources and the financing by political decision. Makers who abuse their position to sustain power, status, and wealth. A good example of corruption is bribery. Bribery is defined as the giving and receiving of something of value to influence an official action or decision. According to my understanding, corruption is the cooperation of two or more people in exchanging value in order to gain or dispense advantage over others by pending the set rules and the regulations for mutual benefit. Those who give value are favored by those who receive value. Corruption is not only done by public officials but also private citizens. In many countries, the police service usually rated as most corrupt department of government. Now the question is, who corrupts the police? If I were to rate the most corrupt people in my country, I could start with the general citizenry, and then the departments of government should follow. When the general population is corrupt, all systems, whether public or private, are expected to be corrupt, since they will be manned by representatives of those corrupt people. It is the general population that produce presidents, CEOs, accountants, the policemen, just but to name a few. I have learned by experience that young people aspire to become policemen so that they take bribes and accountants so that they steal, buy the pen, and become rich quickly. Nature of fraud and corruption. Fraud and corruption are crimes perpetrated by smart and polite people. Fraud and corruption being clandestine activities. The perpetrators of fraud and corruption do not want to be exposed and therefore try to conceal their skills, trade as much as possible. This is why, without proactive and creative procedures and policies, it is not easy to prevent and detect fraud and corruption. These vices cannot be eliminated from business, government, or social life, since they are the product of the devil and the humanity. So long as humanity and the devil coexist and interact on earth, there will be no end to corruption. And let us not pretend and deceive anyone that there is any professional that can be able to eradicate fraud and corruption. What we do as professionals in forensic investigation is to minimize fraud and corruption to a negligible level so that organizations and government can thrive, progress well with the smaller dose of fraud and corruption instead of total collapse due to the magnitude of corruption and fraud. Fraud and corruption did not start yesterday. It started with the entry of the devil into the world. It started from the Garden of Eden when the devil beguiled and deceived Eve to partake of the forbidden food. After she took it and ate it, it is tasted good to her against the advice of God, and therefore she took some foods to Adam, who also ate it, and immediately fraud and corruption started. And therefore, fraud and corruption is as old as this earth. It never started yesterday, and it cannot be eliminated or eradicated as long as the devil and the humanity coexist on earth. If there is any person who can be able to eliminate or totally eradicate corruption or fraud from an organization or government, then that person must do either the elimination of the devil or the elimination of humanity or the human factor from business and the transactions. Can this be possible? No. We cannot operate a business without humanity. We cannot operate governments without the human factor. It is impossible. It cannot happen. We cannot eliminate the devil because God has allowed him to exist. So what we can do is to eliminate, is to minimize the impacts of the evil transactions of humanity. I will now discuss some forms of corruption, some other forms of corruption. A, illegal gratuity. What is illegal gratuity? This is like bribery that is given after transactions are complete with an intention to influence future business. A good example of this is a significant gift given to a contract awarded after the contracted service or supply is completed and the payment is done. Why is this illegal? It's because the gift is significant and therefore capable of influencing future business. It's usually given as a free will offering, but it is significant. But if it is significant, then it is bad. If a contract was worth 10 million, for instance, and the contractor decides to give a half a million as a gift after the transaction is completed and payment done, then that is meant to act as bribery for future business because the amount is significant con- compared to the contract value. You If the amount is small, just equivalent to a ranch or something like that, then that amount will not be considered as corruption. The conflict of interest. This is where the self-dealing. Conflict of interest uses a person in conflict of interest uses his position to benefit himself or herself against the interest of the employer. The person in conflict of interest may also use his position or her position to benefit someone else by using the inside information, and that will also be bad. A good example of conflict of interest is when a person in influential information in an organization or company allows his or her department to do business transactions with her company or his company without declaration to the employer. Immediately, this happens where the employees leak in information about the tenders to the persons or organizations to facilitate winning of tenders for a fee or a promise of monetary gain or benefit. Product substitution. Unscrupulous suppliers in a partnership with the corrupt employees supply items that were not ordered and they are received. These substitutes are usually of low quality and hence low price, but the same amount is paid out for them and the difference is shared with the collaborating employees. That is very bad because that is defrauding or carrying out corruption. This is the end of the introductory lesson to forensic investigation master class. If you have any questions, you have a minute or two to ask before I hang up. Many lessons will follow, so please keep on tuned up. Tune up every day to receive the live lessons. I can see there is no questions, and therefore I hang up. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.